Dr. Cox, if you're speaking, you're muted right now, so we cannot hear you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, we'll begin with item number 3, public comment. Were there any written comments submitted?
No, sir.
Is anyone signed up to provide verbal comments?
No, sir.
At this time, we will close public comment and move to item number 4, the workshop, a review and discussion on the strategy to manage and fill vacancies within the Animal Service Division. I'm going to turn it over to Stacy, but why can't I see myself?
Maybe start video.
Mm-hmm.
You at the bottom left, it's where it's at in mine.
No.
No.
Let's see. Start my video.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I knew y'all all wanted to see me.
Of course we do.
Okay, Stacy.
All right, thank you. We were having some technical difficulties. I think I'm back. All of a sudden I had gotten disconnected. Okay, so today during this presentation, I wanted to provide the board with an update regarding our process to manage and fill the vacancies within the Animal Services Division. So as you see on the screen, there are currently 4 vacancies within the Animal Services program. The administrative coordinator, 2 animal services officers, and the animal services manager. Since we last met a couple of weeks ago, an additional vacancy has been added to this list as one of our animal services officers recently resigned from his position with the city. Next slide, please. So as we discussed during the last meeting, the city continues to support animal services in a variety of ways. The actions on this slide were reviewed during the last meeting and they are continuing today. Next slide, please. In addition to the actions that we had previously discussed at the last meeting, a request for temporary personnel for the April to June timeframe was submitted, and a temporary, when it was approved. And so now we are working with a temp agency to identify candidates for us to review for kennel technician and part-time receptionist positions. So in total, we would have 2 kennel technicians and a part-time receptionist as temporary personnel at the shelter during that April to June time period. 1 kennel technician is actually already currently working with us at the shelter as temporary personnel. And this approval will allow us to continue her work through the temp agency during this time period. And then also work with the temp agency to identify that second kennel technician and then the part-time receptionist. I also wanted to note that we have been working with the Facility Services Division to complete repairs and maintenance to the animal services buildings. To date, we have been able to complete about 60% of the identified repair and maintenance needs. They've been addressed or in progress. And we plan to provide an update with you later this week regarding the status of each of the maintenance items that had been addressed. Next slide. Okay. As we discussed during the last meeting, we are proceeding with city-led recruitment of the administrative coordinator and animal services officer positions. Next slide, please. So the administrative coordinator position has been advertised and the application review process is currently underway. Interviews will be scheduled as candidates are identified in order to keep this process moving as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Stacy, I think we're losing you. All right.
Okay,
There
can
we
you
go.
hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So with the animal services officer positions, they have also been advertised and the application review process is underway. We plan to use the same application pool for both of these positions, which will allow us to fill them quicker. And again, interviews will be scheduled as those candidates are identified in order to keep the process moving. Next slide, please. As we discussed during the last meeting, the city will utilize a recruitment firm to identify animal services manager candidates. At this time, the animal services manager job description has been updated, and we are working with the human resources department to identify that recruitment firm. So the intent of today's presentation was really to just provide an update on the status of our progress to manage and fill these vacancies. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this topic. We also have our Director of Human Resources on the call today as well, and she'll be able to assist if there are any other questions regarding the recruitment and vacancies.
Has there been any interest from within the city of Sugar Land employees for the administrative position, considering they would actually have a clue what they need to sort of do?
I believe we may have had one internal applicant, and they would be considered in this process with the other applicants as well.
This is just a point of education for me, please. On page 2 of the job description for the supervisor, it says that they can euthanize sick and injured, unwanted or unclaimed animals. Does that take a team to discuss it, or can that person just come in and arbitrarily euthanize?
So euthanasia is not a process that we take lightly here at the City of Sugar Land, and we do not perform euthanasia in-house.
I would add to that, that this is something that the board worked on quite a bit in the past. And there was.
That is something that we coordinate. Am I here?
Sorry, I thought you were finished.
Oh, I'm sorry. It froze is what I understand.
Okay.
We're having some technical difficulties today. No, so euthanasia is not something that we take lightly here at the city. We work through that process with our veterinarians, as we do not perform euthanasia in-house.
I'd like to.
But it's stated that.
Good point for
I'm
me to
sorry,
add.
but it's stated that you. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, somebody speak.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to add, I had just emailed Stacy, so I don't believe she's had a chance to see it. At the next meeting that we have, I would like to present a no-kill policy to the Animal Advisory Board that I think would help build upon all the great work and everything that has been done up until this point. So I would like to go over that in just a little bit more detail, possibly, to address those concerns.
I think we might have lost Stacy.
Do we need to table that so we can get it on the agenda for next time?
Probably.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
I'm
motion.
not sure.
I
Excuse me.
so move.
Meredith, can you please weigh in on
Oh,
if
good, the big box.
There is not a motion for an item that is not listed on the agenda. So for a request to have an item on a future agenda, we need to go back and look at the boards and commission's policy to make sure that we follow the procedures in place to place an item on the agenda. We'll do that this afternoon and we'll get back with you and we'll consult with the chair as far as how to place it on a future agenda.
Thank you.
Hey, Marion, I know you brought up that particular line. When I was reading the job description, that line sort of bothered me because it comes across that we are euthanizing unwanted animals, and that is not the case in any way, shape, or form. That needs to be removed.
Well, but I'd like to add that we spent a lot of time discussing this, and we felt, the board at the time that all this was decided, felt that our manager needed to have a good understanding of what constitutes an animal that can't be saved versus, you know, one that can. So they have to have that knowledge so they can interact with the vets and the other people. And Robin, I think you know that the emails went around to, or not emails, but votes were taken at the shelter by various people in management there. So it was never a one-person decision, even when a vet recommended it. So the vet, you know, outside the shelter, the city's veterinarian would make a recommendation, and then the vet tech and the manager and others on staff would take a vote and decide whether they agreed with that. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to do it, because, you know, we don't do it internally, but I do feel that they have to have a strong working knowledge of what, you know, what diseases would, you know, when an animal can't be saved versus when it's just going to take a little extra time and effort and all that to save them. So maybe the verbiage there needs to be changed, but that was the historical thinking behind that comment, or behind that part of the job description.
Right. Yeah, well, like I said, yeah, I totally get it, because
I do too.
Yeah. But it's just worded wrong, and it's worded harsh.
we can absolutely take a look at that to make sure that it's in line with our practices.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stacy, is there a hiring committee, or is it simply an HR function? You know, is there an internal hiring committee that will look at the manager, like to replace Catherine? I'm wondering if city staff that from, you know, that has had experience working with the shelter will be part of the hiring process, or is it simply a function of HR?
No, absolutely. As we discussed kind of in our last meeting, what we are looking to do is kind of a two-phase interview process, so that we would have two separate groups of individuals who would be interviewing those candidates. And then we also talked about Dr. Cox serving on the board, or the interview panel for that last phase.
Thank you.
Would it be possible for the final candidates to just like have a Zoom meeting with us, with the Animal Advisory Board? Because we would really like to collaborate with them. And so just help to see if it's a good fit.
That's something that we can consider through that process. It's not something that we had identified at this point, but that's something that we can look at.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have no other.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Cox, I don't think there's any more questions, so you can adjourn the meeting if everything's settled in here.
Your mic is muted, Dr. Cox.
There we go. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
meeting is adjourned. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.